Hey everybody, Christy up north, Airgunner. So today we're here back with the Karma EQ, and I want to do a quick update. Since my previous video where we went on the hunting trip for iguana into Puerto Rico, we took the SLS and the EQ with us, and that was the very first time these guns had actually been shipped into the United States, and we took them with us on that hunt. And since then, there's actually been some pretty awesome advancements. I wanted to give you guys a quick update about the Karma EQ. And then also I'm down here in Florida at the DonnyFL headquarters, and I've spent the last 2 days going through every single 22 caliber slug that I have access to do some really quick testing to show you guys what this thing really likes when it comes to slugs, because I've gotten a lot of questions about this. When I went hunting with this in the 25 cal in Puerto Rico, we were running the 34 grain AEA pellets, and we had done some slug testing, some really quick brief slug testing in the 22 cal, but I really wanted to do a really deep dive with this thing. So I'm not going to bore you with, a 20-minute long video about shooting groups, but I can tell you that I went through probably, it was close to a dozen, maybe about 14 different manufacturers of slugs. And I took them from 850 feet per second all the way up to as fast as they would go. So that was going to vary from like a 22 grain FX hybrid all the way up to the Zan ELRs, which are 42.3 grains. And I basically just did the entire velocity spread just to see what this gun liked, what it can do. And so our results have been fantastic. But one of the things I want to talk to you about isn't just what this barrel likes, but a new improvement that the EQ has done is that the engineers at Karma, working with some of the feedback that Abner, myself, and some of the early testers had. So what we found in the early testing with this thing is that the trigger on this, I would have called it, it's like hunt ready, right? It was a little bit on the heavy side, a little bit of creep, and we gave a lot of that feedback to Karma, and they came out with an amazing update on this thing. And so I flew down here to Florida to check this out, and I will tell you what I was expecting was that they fixed the first long travel on that first stage. So I didn't realize how much of a change it was going to be to actually hitting a nice wall and a crisp break. And come to find out, when they say there's an adjustable trigger here, there's a lot more adjustability that goes into this trigger that I was aware of. All I can tell you is when you get this thing adjusted to where it needs to be, it is now a great trigger. And what I needed to have to shoot proper groups from the bench is I needed to have a much better trigger. Now, with the trigger fix, we also are running the Saber Tactical bottle clamp here, so that way we can actually run a bipod. But now that we've got those two things fixed, I felt comfortable of actually coming out, shooting some groups on paper, and actually giving you guys some test results. This is a 600 millimeter barrel, right? And so the amount of power that we're getting out of this is around 75, up to 75 foot-pounds of energy out of this 600 millimeter barrel. Now, like I said in the previous video though, this thing is extremely solid. I would call it a very, almost like a miniaturized version of the Red Panda barrel. It's very stiff. It's got the 360-degree radial port. And what is interesting about it is it's a 17.7, 1 in 17.7 twist rate on this, which is, in my mind, between 1 in 16 to 1 in 18. Somewhere in there, you're going to find some really good slug tunes. But usually a 1 in 16 twist rate is usually needed to shoot some very heavy for caliber slugs. But it also emphasized that the new Zan ELRs, the balance of these slugs, even when you get up, or especially when you get up into the heavier for caliber projectiles, especially in 22, for me that's like the 38s, 39s, 40s, above 40 grain, 42.3 grain is what the Zans are. That the balance has to be perfect to be able to have the kind of stability downrange. So the last 2 days of testing, we're going to show you my results. I'm just going to cut to the chase and tell you exactly what it likes. So let's start off on the light side of the slugs. The 22 grain FX hybrids were phenomenal out of this thing. So if I'm getting into this as a hunting rig, guys, if you've never checked out the FX hybrids, they've been around for quite some time now. But I will tell you, in all my testing of any slug on the market, full stop, they have the hardest hitting energy dumping ability of those slugs, because they're just basically dumping everything in the first few inches of a hitting. So in the 22 cal, those 22 grain slugs are just dumping everything right away. All right, so messing around with the FX hybrids, man, these things are pretty darn good. Kind of started opening up a little bit here as we started getting into 1054. This is completely wound out. I lowered the reg a bit, kind of started bringing the reg down a little bit. And when I brought the reg down, it really liked about 1,015 and 1,016 feet per second. it is stacking them there at 50 yards. So you know, we're here in Florida, so let's put an orange up here and see what we can do with those hybrids and see what kind of terminal performance we can get. All right, we did not think that through all that well. We just covered my microphone in juice. So with these 22s, that's the entry and that's the exit. I mean, for a 22, the kind of terminal performance you can expect from those FX hybrids, just absolutely wicked. So birds, small game, absolutely amazing. But what I loved about this is you're shooting half-inch groups at my tuning distance, and I think they were the best or a close tie for the next slug that I would highly recommend, which is the Zan 28 grains. These things were absolutely stacking. Now, those hollow points in the Zans are also very good. Great hunting slug. You're going to get a little bit more penetration as compared to the FX hybrid. And at a 28 grain slug, it's a little bit on the lighter side. So smaller game, birds, rabbits, squirrels, shorter distances. And when you're running those lighter slugs, you want to make sure that you're running them in a little bit. You don't want to be pushing those out 100, 150 yards. They just don't have the ballistic coefficient, and they're going to get pushed around in the wind a little bit. But for those two lighter weight slugs, absolutely amazing. So let's go to the other end of the spectrum. If you're getting this gun, a must buy are the 38.6 grain AEAs. All right, so there it is, everybody. The AEAs, 38.6 grains. I'm gonna call that really good at 50 yards. Those are hollow points. The BC isn't very high, but they are a hunting slug. They've got kind of like drive bands, or like what we'd call like grease grooves in the big bore world. They've got drive bands around them, but they've got this massive hollow point, and at 38.6 grains, you are using absolutely almost all the foot-pounds of energy that you have at your availability with this gun. So if you need a little bit more penetration, maybe you're hitting like, you know, raccoons, squirrels in Kentucky, which are absolutely huge, I would err on using that 38.6 grain slug, because that thing is a beast, and those things were absolutely stacking at 50 yards. And lastly, I'm just going to bring up the slug that keeps amazing me, is those 42.3 grains Zan ELRs. I have shot those as slow as 750 feet per second. I have shot them as fast as 1,020 feet per second. And right here with this, at 865 feet per second, I think is where we were at with this. All right, so again, tuning groups, just going through my process, I kind of go to the high and the low. So this is the 835, 875, 865, 865 here. You can get stuff like that. So that is a half-inch group right there with the Zan ELRs. I will say, if you are looking to get into a slug shooter, and if you're just getting into PCP air guns, I think this is a really good, solid platform to get into. That's my quick overview on the slug shooting and the amazing new trigger that we've got here in the Karma EQ. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Take care.